Welcome back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. So it's going to be me and Isaac today. We're going to be giving our top 10 third basemen in the MLB. Chase isn't here with us today, but we will bring up his list. Fortunately, he had some things that we found a little questionable on it. Won't have a chance to defend himself. But I don't know. We'll go through with ours today, discuss why we have our guys where, and maybe a couple differences that we have. But me and Isaac's list is pretty similar, I'd say. Isaac, you want to go off and just read through your list and kind of give your breakdown on your guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be reading off my phone. Sorry if I'm not looking at the screen. But number one, I got Jose Ramirez. I know there might be some bias for us Padre fans. Maybe you guys thought Padre fans or Machado should be first, but the season Jose Ramirez had last year was phenomenal. Led all third basemen in WAR, and quite frankly, I don't think it was very close. A third baseman that can hit, I think it was like 36 home runs, 270 batting average, 27 stolen bases while being an above average fielder or a pretty good fielder. Just a fantastic year overall for Jose Ramirez. He doesn't even look like the kind of guy that can be, a premier athlete in baseball, but, fantastic overall season when you look at what he did. But number two, I got Manny Machado, and I think that might be an unpopular opinion because a lot of people still think Nolan Arenado is second, but when you look at Nolan Arenado's numbers these past 2 years, and of course, 2020 was a shortened season, so a small sample size. They're just not as good as Manny. Manny had a phenomenal 2020. He was on pace to be like a 7 or 8 WAR player in 2020. And then this past year was almost or was a 5 WAR player. We watch him night in, night out, make phenomenal plays. He's our captain. Hit 28 home runs. I don't know what his batting average is. I think his OPS was constantly around 850, I want to say. But another really good year for Manny, and another year where he's proven that he's worth his contract. And not only because, what he does on the field, but just what he does for the Padres clubhouse off the field, just phenomenal. Number three, I got Nolan Arenado, batted 250-something. I don't know exactly, 250-something this year with, I think, 34 home runs. Where he's going to make up for that is on the field, just playing defense, phenomenal defense, a platinum glove winner. He's won the gold glove again, I believe, and he's just been a phenomenal piece for the Rockies and the Cardinals. Of course, I have him at 3, and that's going to be a little unpopular because from, I think it was like 2015 to 2019, something like that, he was unquestionably the best third baseman in baseball. So, really good years from him, just 2 down years, and I still think he's a top 3 third baseman, and, maybe we have him back at number 1 next year. Number 4, I went Austin Riley. Batted over 300 this year. This was his breakout season. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he plays some really solid defense. I've seen him make some really solid plays. But I think, that whole Braves infield had 30-plus bombs. So, it's kind of hard for me to leave Austin Riley out of the top 5 considering the breakout year he had. I will say I was a huge Austin Riley doubter. I thought he sucked in 2020, but he absolutely proved me wrong in 2021. Huge breakout for him. Number 5, I got Anthony Rendon. Age is kind of starting to catch up to him. We saw that he had an injury-riddled year, but nonetheless, he's still going to put up, really solid numbers at the plate next year. I still think I think his defense is going to falter a little bit because remember, there was a time where Anthony Rendon was considered, number 1 or 2 second baseman in baseball. I think age has kind of caught up to him a little bit. Of course, he's not that much older than Manny, but I don't know what it is. Manny's durability, he's been fantastic. Rendon, otherwise, just injuries are starting to catch up to him a little bit. Age is starting to catch up to him at the plate. I still think he's going to be fantastic. I just think he's going to falter a little bit on defense. Number 6, Rafael Devers. So I got Rafael Devers at 6 because of his offensive production. Phenomenal player offensively. Defensively is very lackluster, but just like who was it? I forgot who it was that I mentioned lacks defense, but makes up for it on the offensive side. Devers has been fantastic. I think he's, going to be the backbone of the Red Sox for years to come. And it's very hard for me to put him lower than 6 because after that, I got Alex Bregman. I think he had a down year. Been fantastic otherwise for the Astros. I know, of course, a lot of people are going to say he shouldn't even be here because he cheated. But I think next year he's going to prove that he didn't have to cheat. Still very good defensively. And I think, they made the World Series again. And I still think he was, a big reason why they did it, even if stats don't show. Next up, I got Yoan Moncada. And me and Matt kind of talked about this because there's no stat that really pops off when you watch or when you look up his stats. There's no, like, his average is just there. I think it's 270. I think his OBP was pretty high. His on base percentage, I want to say it was like 360, 370. So that's really good. Maybe that's the stat that pops off. Solid defender. Correct me if I'm wrong on that as well, because I didn't check his defensive stats. But
his OPS was, or his on base percentage was 375, by the way.
yeah, so that's probably the stat that pops off the most for sure. That's pretty good. I don't know what his OPS was. Matt, do you know his OPS?
787.
Yeah, so nothing crazy there. It's just because he only hit 14 home runs. So that's why, like, he could be higher, but only 14 home runs. Like, I don't think that's enough for a third baseman. But nonetheless, I think I have him at 8. Number 9, Matt Chapman. Man, suffered such a bad year at the plate. I think it's been a really bad 2 years for him at the plate. There's nothing to really defend him offensive wise. Like, you can't really make an argument as why he should be higher than all of these guys, but defensively, of course, still really solid, still going to be a premier defender. Just offensive wise, he needs to pick it up a lot, because there's no argument to have him in your top 5 when realistically he can be a top 5 third baseman. There's no argument to have him there if he's not putting up offensive production. Number 10, I know he's pretty slow, and I know he's maybe not the best defensively, but I got Justin Turner there just because of what he's done at the plate. Will he do it again? I don't know, because he is getting up there in age. He can barely move now. But just at the plate, he's been fantastic, and I think he's been a lot better than a lot of third basemen in the league. It was hard between it was hard between him and Eduardo Escobar. I think Eduardo Escobar is still kind of a slept-on name just because, he's nothing big, he's nothing crazy, but he's consistent. That's what Eduardo Escobar is. But when you look at offensive production, Justin Turner's just been fantastic. My honorable mentions, I put Chris Bryant there, and I know it's kind of weird, if you're thinking, why didn't I hear Chris Bryant at third base? It's because if you look at how many games he played in the outfield compared to in the infield, it was like 90 plus in the outfield and 60 something in third base, at third base. So that's why Chris Bryant is not on this list, because technically, if you go off 2021, he is an outfielder. So that's why he's only in my honorable mentions, playing only 30 something or 60 something games in at third base. Last honorable mention is Eduardo Escobar. I already talked about him earlier. Just really consistent.
Yeah, so our lists are pretty similar. I'll go through mine, and then Isaac, if you want to read off Chase's after that. But going through mine, have the same guy at number 1, Jose Ramirez. You look up at some of the numbers that Jose Ramirez has had, and okay, we are huge Manny Machado fans. I'm also a huge Nolan Arenado fan. I think Nolan Arenado is a great player, but over the last 4 seasons, if you want to really look at how good Jose Ramirez has been, he has a number 2 MVP vote. He has 2 number 3 MVP votes. And last year, he was 6th in MVP voting, and he had the best WAR at third base. Over the last 5 years, he has put together the best seasons. He has been the best player. And when you're looking through this list, one thing that's really common is guys that have either been slumping recently or they've only recently had really good years. It's really odd. But you go through these stats, and it's like, oh yeah, these guys had a couple off years. Like, consistency has not been a thing for this top 10, like these top 10 third basemen. It's like last 2 years awful, or before that didn't really do anything, and then last year they were great. It's been stuff like that. So you look through it, super consistent. Might not be the defensive player, might not have the accolades that Manny Machado and Nolan Arenado have, but I think right now, I think I'd probably have to put him at number 1. That's not to knock these guys underneath him at all. That's just a credit to how great he's been. Number 2, Manny Machado. Like you said, Isaac, I think a lot of people might take Arenado ahead of him. But you look at Arenado's last 2 years. I'm going to get into those in a second here. You look at his last 2 years, he just hasn't quite put up the numbers that Machado has. Meanwhile, Machado was on pace for an 8-WAR season in 2020. Now, it is only 60 games. This last season, the power wasn't there. You could see he was dealing with a shoulder injury. Still finishes the year with an 836 OPS. And had, what was his WAR? It was pretty good, a 5-WAR season. You have a 5-WAR season when you're battling injury. That is very, very impressive. So props to Manny Machado. He's been everything and more than what we kind of wanted from him after he signed with the Padres. And that, like, from Padre fans, I think everyone has been super, super happy with how the Machado deal has turned out. Then we go to Arenado. Arenado, you look at his last 2 years. Like I said, you look at all these guys' numbers, and then they fall apart. Last 2 years, definitely been down years for him. Now, 2020, short year, only played 48 games. I'm not going to put a ton against him. Last year, it's his first time in St. Louis. We see a lot of players when they change teams that first year, it takes them a while to get comfortable. I'm going to give Arenado the benefit of the doubt that he is going to be, and maybe he won't put up the home run, like the power numbers that he did in Colorado, but I think he's going to be very close to the caliber player that he is in Colorado this next season and for the next few as well before, age starts to catch up with him. But you look at 2015 through 2019, and you probably got to rock with him in that time span of being the best third baseman in the game. 5 platinum gold gloves, 9 gold gloves, 4 silver sluggers, 6-time All-Star. He's the best defensive third baseman in the league. However, I will say I think Machado was better last year. We'll say that. But, you look at the course of his career, and he's been amazing. He has been an extraordinary player, and a guy that's been an all-star caliber player in most of his years. So I do expect that he'll bounce back, but I think that's probably a good spot at 3. After that, I got Alex Bregman. Last 2 years has not really put up good numbers at all. However, you go back, I think it's either 2019 or 2018. In one of the years, he had a 7 WAR, and the other year, he had a 9 WAR. A 9 WAR. Like, that is something you rarely see from players. So, dude completely balled out. Let's see if he can bounce back because of that, all that success a couple years back. I do think that you got to put him ahead of some of these other guys. If you have Devers and Riley ahead of him, I get it. That's fair. But I just put him at 4 because of that. 5, I got Rafael Devers. I've talked about how I really like some of these guys on the Red Sox. Devers is one of those dudes, can absolutely rake. One of my good friends is a Red Sox fan, and back, when was it? Who are we trading? There was a guy that the Padres were trading, and Devers, there was one rumor that Devers was going to go to the Padres, and I would mess with him so much that I wanted to see Rafael Devers become a Padre. You look at him now, in my opinion, he's a top 5 third baseman in the league. Maybe not crazy defensively, but not like anything like really atrocious or bad where it's just like, oh, you got to like really like, dock him for that. I don't think that's the case. But offensively, he's great. Austin Riley hasn't been in the league much, but last year he was an awesome player, and he improved his defense a lot from 2020 to 2021. So got to give him credit there as well. Anthony Rendon, since Rendon signed with the Angels, got banged up. I think that he's probably going to catch up. I don't know if he'll be as good as he was in his earlier part of his career. But he's a guy, like, it's hard to really knock him a ton for not putting up good seasons the last couple of years because he's barely played. He's played 110 games over the last 2 years. And even in 2020, he put up pretty solid numbers. But then you look at 2017 through 2019, he had over a 900 OPS all of those years, 40 home runs all of those years for the Nationals. If he can get back to that, he's going to climb in these rankings, and you could see him as high as 4 if you look at this next year, because he could definitely be a bounce back candidate. A lot of these guys are like that. After Rendon at 7, I got Makata. Like we were saying, it's just like he's a good player, but there's nothing that you're just like, oh, I absolutely love that. And with how big of a deal power is in today's game, I find it hard for him to ever live up to the hype that he had as a prospect, just because the power numbers are not going to be there. I don't expect that to drastically change. So I put him at 8. At 9, I have Matt Chapman. Definitely had a couple down years recently. Got to bounce back if you're going to see that change at all. And then at 10, I have Eduardo Escobar, who was on the Diamondbacks for a while. Is he on the Brewers now? I know he's on the Brewers a little bit last year.
Yeah, so he went from he played for the Brewers after the trade deadline. Now he's with the Mets.
Got it. Okay. So maybe we'll see what happens with him, but he's also been a guy that, like, throughout his career, when he's on the field, that's the big emphasis, when he's on the field, because he's missed a lot of games with injuries. He's been a very consistent player, very solid. Nothing insane, but there was a lot of guys I think you could put at 10 here. Maybe at 9 too if you don't include Chapman on this list, but the list kind of starts to fall down, but some of these top guys are amazing players. So a lot of credit to them. Also, love to see Manny Machado getting some love from us at 2. But Isaac, what does Chase's list look like?
So Chase's list, at number 1, he kind of has I think he's kind of torn. He has Machado and Arenado. So I think he's trying to say, like, you could place him either way he wants, but I'll speak on his behalf. Machado's number 1, Arenado's number 2. Rafael Devers, number 3. Matt Chapman, number 4. Anthony Rendon, number 5. Jose Ramirez, number 6. Austin Riley, number 7. Yohan Moncada, number 8. Joe Urshela, number 9. Or I don't even know if I'm counting these right, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's Machado, Arenado, Bregman, Devers, Chapman, Rendon, Ramirez, Riley, Moncada, Urshela. Honorable mention, Josh Donaldson.
Yeah, and if you guys follow the show a good amount, I think one thing you'll notice is, like, Chase, for instance, like, he's not going to try to change it that much from year to year, where me and Isaac are looking at this more year to year. But you look at some of these numbers, you look at the high end of Bregman, of Arenado, and you can see them up high. The one thing I will say is I do think that you got to give Jose Ramirez a little bit more love. Me and Isaac were talking about that today. Unfortunately, Chase isn't here to kind of explain his list, but that's what he's got. But yeah, so I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Comment your top 10 list. Let us know what you think about ours. Is there a guy that we're totally overvaluing, totally undervaluating? Maybe there's a guy that you think is going to sneak into the top 10 that we didn't mention in this one. You're like, hey, this guy's better than some of these guys you mentioned at the end of your list. Let us know who that is. We want to hear your guys' opinions. But that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. And we will be going live tomorrow, 9 a.m. Going to be talking 49ers, Chargers, Padres questions, kind of all of it just in a Q&A. But let us know what your guys' top 10 list is. And next week, we're probably going to be wrapping up this segment, I think, and then also wrapping up the grading AJ Preller's trades after that. So next couple of weeks, just wrapping up these series. Hopefully we'll get some more baseball news soon. But that's going to do it for today's episode. So thank you for listening, and let us know what your top 10 third basemen are.